Hello, everyone. Welcome again to a new session, a new webinar about these multidisciplinary approaches to rhythm and bodily practices. We are very happy to have you all here. And today we will have two speakers, Carine Plancke, Dr. Carine Plancke. She's an anthropologist. Currently, she's doing her postdoctoral research. And she had made huge contributions to rhythm research. She has observed and analyzed dance and ritual. And the way she used rhythm is very thought-provoking. She discusses big figures in anthropology, such as Lévi-Strauss and Victor Turner. And we are very happy that Carine accepted our invitation. She is going to be presenting about the twin dance among the Punu society in the Congo-Brazzaville. And our second speaker is Nayara Rota Asunsao. She's part of the Corremundos project. Thank you very much, Nayara, for joining us and for accepting to participate here and for sharing your knowledge. She's going to be speaking about rhythmic variations in movement and musical accompaniment of belly dance traditions. So looking forward that you all enjoy this session. The way these sessions works, for those of you who are not familiar, we first have like between 30 and 45 minutes where the speakers share the knowledge, and then we open a round of question and answers. And so first we are going to start with Carine, then a round of questions, and then with Nayara, and again another round of questions. So thank you very much. We really appreciate your participation, and Carine, welcome here. Thank you for participating.
Okay, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for the short introduction. So yeah, so as you said, the topic I will focus on is rhythm, and especially it's a link to ritual, because it's the kind of topic I've mainly discussed in my work. And so it's about like the role of rhythm, particularly in activating, I would say, the capacity of ritual to induce a dynamic of social regeneration. It's kind of, if I can summarize it like that. And so we'll start from Turner's influential work on ritual, where he defines ritual as anti-structure, as most of you know, I think, which paradoxically in the same way revitalizes social structure. And so this revitalization, his view, is possible because liminality, which is another word he uses for this anti-structure, is, as he says, not only the nay to all positive structural assertions, as he says, but in some sense, he says as well, is the source of them all. And so I'm very much interested in this idea of liminality as the source. And also he says it's not just destructured, but also pre-structured. And so it's this, I think, which allows to think about ritual as something that can generate something new and can regenerate things as well. And so my main argument is that looking at rhythm, which when you actualize it in song and dance is often a very crucial part of ritual, it helps to understand this generative and revitalizing capacity of ritual. So this is a bit like, I think it's really important to look at rhythm when you study ritual, to understand what happens and how ritual can have such an impact and a social impact. And so I will develop this argument in reference to my own ethnographic work on song dance practices in rural Punu communities in Congo-Brazzaville. And so I will discuss, in fact, two performances, not just on the one hand, it's the water spirit or the twin dances, but I will also talk about rejoicing dances, because I think both of them, it's interesting to look for both of them at what they do with rhythm and how rhythm is like crucial in the kind of effect they have. And so these two examples will also allow to reconsider what I would call important tendencies in anthropological theorizing on ritual. On the one hand, you can see a kind of privileging of structure at the expense of a consideration of flow and fluidity, which is very much exemplified in the work of Lévi-Strauss. And so we'll look at that in regard to the twin or water spirit dances. And secondly, there's also has been a kind of strong opposition between a focus on social regeneration in the sense of just regenerating same structures, and on the other hand, on innovation. And this is very much exemplified by the debate between Durkheim and Tarde. And so here as well, I will look at how rhythm can give a kind of new look on this kind of dilemma. So first, maybe before I started, I will show you two dance fragments because I want you to have just an idea about what the dancing is like. So first I will show you just 1 minute of the water spirit or the twin dancing. In fact, twins are considered to be water spirits. So it's the same type of dances that is performed as well for water spirit rituals as for twin rituals. So I first will show you that. I filmed it at the occasion of a funeral of a twin mother. So, and it was during the night, so it's not very clear, but I don't have many recordings. And then secondly, I will show you just a small fragment as well of rejoicing dance, of the ikoku dancing. And this was done to welcome a minister in the region. So I will show you both of these so you can have an idea of what I'm talking about. And then I will go into the explanation of how we can look at rhythm in both of these performances. So I think before I can share the screen, I have to be made host, I think, Jorgi.
Yes, I just made you the host, so please, I want to ask you to also make sure that you're ticking the box that it's sharing the audio from your computer.
Okay,
so that we can
I just
see
have admitted someone else who was like waiting, I don't know, but just
thank you.
Okay, so share the screen.
And also share the audio from your computer and we should be fine.
Okay, so this is the first, water spirit dancing fragment. Okay, I'll stop it here because it's like it continues on, and else maybe it will take a bit too much time. I'll just show you the second. I think if I have the. Okay, so I show. Okay, so I think this gives you an idea about what I'm talking, because it's a bit difficult to talk about dancing if you don't have like any idea how it looks like. So first, we'll discuss like the first type, the water spirit or twin dance rituals. And so I'll give you a bit of background on this whole water spirit world, because in order to understand like what the dancing does, you really have to also understand like the whole like cosmological view behind. So the water spirit world in Punu society, it's a world, of course, of water and flow, and it's very much conceptualized as a kind of source place, I would say, an originary world of abundance that has maternal connotations. It's a kind of place where all human beings come from in Punu view, and twins are seen as humans who maintain a link with this world throughout their life and are even considered to be water spirits. And say they somehow remain in contact with this source place, even though other people's humans like only are there in the beginning of their life and then like get disconnected. It's also a world of continuity beyond neat divisions or categorizations. You can see it in the fact that the maternal is not seen as exclusively female, but very much as encompassing both genders, in the same way as because it's a matrilineal society, like the matrilineal principle, lineages encompass like both genders. And the water spirits as well are always seen as living in male-female couples. There's also a continuity between human, nature, and spirit realms, because water spirits manifest in diverse animal forms, like animals from the water, from the earth, from the sky, as well as in natural phenomena like rain and thunder. So they're like kind of pervasive within nature. And twins as well, in humans, like twins are the kind of embodiment of water spirits. And they are seen on a social level to like transcend ordinary distinctions and ordinary categorizations. They are somehow like situated outside of the normal social space, marked by differentiations linked to like gender, age, and clan belonging. And so they very much have to be treated in accordance with this special nature. So they have like their own names, which can be used for both genders, which is usually not the case. Also, differentiation through age is kind of somehow blurred in their case, because the last born is considered to be the oldest. And also the order of birth cannot be mentioned, and which usually is a kind of important thing in Punu society, because older people have to be like treated with more respect. So this is somehow subverted in their case, because they always have to be treated equally. So you should not know who was the firstborn. And so while they belong to particular clans, they also transcend clan boundaries, because they are considered to be a blessing for the whole village. The good luck that they bring through dreams is not limited to their family or clan members. And their gifts as well, whenever they give something, it has to be shared with all members of community. You cannot just keep it for yourself. Also, the twin births concern the whole village community. Generally, when there's a death of twins or a birth, they are like dancing, and this is something that is not limited to the close relatives of the family. It's something that involves the whole community. As well, when there's collective fishing in the pools of the water spirits, it's something that like consolidates village community as something which is somehow based on clan belonging, but also transcended, because in a village, like because of the patrilineal principle, there are like several matrilineages that cohabit, and so this kind of the whole community is involved in these kind of rituals. Another kind of important element that shows that the world of the water spirit and the way of looking at them is something, it goes beyond ordinary social categorization, is the use of colors. The colors white and red are very much used in these rituals. And there's an anthropologist, Jacobson Whitting, who has very much worked on the use of colors among the lower Congo peoples. And she says that red, the symbolic value of red, it's a neutral value that transcends binary oppositions in her view. It symbolizes mediation, moral neutrality. She says lack of rules, chaos, non-structure, magic power, emotionality. So it's everything which is not like neatly fitting into categories. So it's indeterminate, has dynamic properties. And so in her view, she says that Congolese people benefit from this dynamic potential of this irrational value. For instance, in combining red and white, because white has more positive connotations while red is ambivalent, there's a kind of way of orienting positively an ambivalent power. And this is what happens, in my view, in Punu twin and water spirit rituals. because they like these colors are used. Participants receive like red and white spots on their foreheads and on their temples. And twins and water spirits are viewed as they bring prosperity, they bring fertility, but they're also very ambivalent because they're always like twins. You have to like do what they wish. They're very whimsical. You never know what they want. They can give their gifts to anyone they like. So they're kind of ambivalent, but in the same time, they bring prosperity. And so in the rituals as well, the idea is that you like start from something ambivalent and try to orient it in a kind of life-enhancing way. And so the color red, the use of the color red is quite interesting in this regard. And there's, interestingly, my view is that dancing as well very much functions on that level. And the Punu word for dancing, which is used in the context of the water spirit dancing, is ukimba, which is linked to a noun, kimbu. And it means literally a kind of great movement, the unfolding of a strong energy. It's a word that always is used for kind of something that creates a big movement. And it's quite neutral. It can be used, for instance, in a context of water spirits to refer to a huge catfish, which is called ngwangi, which is considered a kind of water spirit because it's such a huge fish. But it can also be used in context of witchcraft, which is a very much more negative context when, for instance, the healer of diseases due to bewitchment, when he has to place pressure on the witch to liberate the victim, it's also this kind of word that is used. And so it shows very much as well that dancing is very much apprehended as a kind of energy. And it's what you do with it if that makes it something which will have like positive or negative effects. And so I think this kind of allows us to look at the way in which ritual, looking at rhythm will allow us to understand in the way in which ritual succeeds in awakening a kind of sense of continuity beyond the logic of classification and binary distinctions, which is based in this activation of a dimension, I would say, a kind of pure energy, of dynamism, which is not necessarily already, has not already directly a specific meaning, but takes a meaning within the context within which it is like deployed. Okay, and so here as well is where like the discussion of Lévi-Strauss comes in, because according to Lévi-Strauss, he says that the search for continuity as brought about by ritual is a vain one, he says, since it is impossible in his view to return to an experience of continuity that precedes classificatory thought. So Lévi-Strauss, in analyzing cultural phenomena, he very much looks at the kind of totalizing logic of reason. And in that sense, the kind of search for continuity that he sees in ritual, it's a kind of vain thing in his view. And he explicitly distances himself from Lévi-Brühl, who in his analysis of ritual and religious thought very much stresses what he called pre-logical processes, foremost with his notion of participation. So he says that like, he uses also a lot the notion of primitive among primitive people. He says, what they look for is like the participation to the whole. And while his thought has often been discredited because of its connotations, like because of his like evolutionary views, I think some of the elements of his view can be interesting if you like dissociate it from the more the evolutionary perspective within which he sees it. And Edward Schieffelin, who is another anthropologist who has worked on ritual, he says that this notion of participation is quite interesting because he says it entails a particular form of consciousness that is foreign to the processes of rationally differentiated thought and privileges resonance and engagement. And he makes the link with rhythm. He says that rhythmical engagement, like in music and dance, can easily generate profound participation, as individuals are incited to move to the rhythm and are carried by its energy. And so a shared reality governs them when this happens. And he says, it is as if the participants, experience the embrace of the whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. So this links up with the notion of continuity. Participation gives a kind of feeling of going beyond divisions in a certain sense. And so in Punu water spirit dancing, dances are really, in the rituals, dancing is crucial. And I mean, the ritual is mostly composed of songs and dances. And in my view, the fact that this is so important has to do with the potential these practices have to ensure full participation in the water spirit world. And this idea of a participation that like somehow overrides a principle of contradiction and overrides issues of categorization is also present in the way Punu conceptualize presence of twins, because often they said to me as well that they said twins come from the water spirit world and in the same time they are water spirits. So it was never very clear if they actually are water spirits or if they simply have a link with this world, but somehow it didn't matter because the idea is that it's something that goes beyond this kind of neat distinctions. And humans too are seen to come from this world, but they are like, in their case, the link is like, the separation is more clear. However, during, especially during dancing, there are possession trances that can happen. And in that case, the kind of separation from the water spirit world is annihilated and there's a kind of reconnection that happens. So, so in that sense, dances is like very important to make again possible a continuity that was originally there in the Punu view. And so what are these dances? You've seen them, they're very continuous, they're like very circular, they are around a fixed center, which is generally, it can be like the shelter for the water spirit, it can be a plate where the twin babies lie, or it can be a coffin when it's at the death of a twin or a twin mother. And so you've seen it's very much, the idea is to keep the same rhythm when proceeding around a circle, following one another. So it's a kind of very simple dance. It's not like a complex thing. It's like really just continuing on and keeping the same rhythm as a group. So there's a kind of, through this repetition of the same dance steps, there's in a seemingly never-ending whirling progression, there's a kind of energy, I would say, that is communicated from one dancer to another. And so there's like, as if you have, as a dancer, access to the global movement because you're like in this continuous circle. And so since the aquatic world of the spirits is itself a place of regeneration, I would say that this circular motion of the dancing somehow resonates with the cyclic temporality of the water spirit world itself, on how it is conceptualized by the Punu. And so the fluidity of the dance also somehow seems to resonate with the water spirit world, which is it is a world of floods and of water and of flow. So in that sense, there's a kind of, as if through doing the dancing, there's a kind of possibility of getting in touch again with this water spirit world. And during, sometimes vocal techniques I use to enhance this feeling of participation and fluidity in the dancing. What happens is that singers will regularly return to the refrain instead of adding improvised phrases, or they will repeat part of it so as to enhance the kind of dialogue between the lead singer and the remainder of the participants. And when you like accelerate it, it becomes like one single movement instead of being the kind of alteration becomes accelerated. In that sense, it's as if there's one collective happening that is going on. And so in that sense, you can see that this also generally, when this happens, it intensifies the dancing. And this, it's at that moment that generally like possession trances can intervene among some of the participants, which enables this kind of more direct contact with the spirits. Because what happens in possession trances is that generally the spirits will talk through the person who is possessed and will generally, it's often seen as they will say their wishes, or generally it happens. Possession trance is a way of re-establishing a contact, which is also a bit disturbed because it's seen as a kind of also a violent phenomenon, because spirits are generally dissatisfied, and through the trance, the possession trance, they will say, claim their wishes, what they need, what they want for them to be happy again. And so it's a way of re-establishing a good relation with the spirit world. And so on the level of the songs as well, you can see this looking for continuity and a kind of fluidity. Generally, the songs, they evoke the water spirit world in all of its manifestations. So they will sing about all the animals, the parrot, the vulture, the spider, the tortoise, the snakes, and also about the wet weather, the rain. So all these elements that are evoked in in the songs. And so there's a kind of chain of images that just like continues. There's not much explanation given. It's rather just evoking all these different elements, these animals, these weather phenomena, as one thing that conveys the water spirit world. And here I follow Brenda Beck, who she says that there is an analogic mode of thinking that is different from the semantic mode of thinking. She criticized a bit Lévi-Strauss's view, which very much privileges the semantic and the binary thought patterns. And according to Beck, she says there's a pre-verbal level of human thought processes where we are not dealing with clear categories, but we are led into a world where reasoning is by analogy and where thought seems to move along paths in a dense network of prior associations. And so this is a kind of sense-dominated level, which is energetic and fluid, she says. It produces concrete, sensual, holistic images. And so in my view, this is what happens in these water spirit songs. And she also makes a link with dreaming. And so the songs for the water spirits always come through dreams. So it's a different level of the, it's not a kind of cognitive thought process, but it's rather this kind of pro-verbal level of human thought process, I think, that is active in these cases. And so you have the songs and the dances, and then you also generally have, it was not in the performance I showed you, but generally there's also someone playing the rhythm, and there's also a bell that is used that is continuously, there's a continuous ringing of a bell that marks the rhythm during the dancing. And here as well, we can, Lévi-Strauss has written on rhythm, but he privileges a very spatial approach to rhythm and a kind of structural approach. He says, he takes as example decorative rhythm. And so he says that rhythm is all about structure, about marking different time elements. However, and especially on a more visual aspect, it's about like, structuring space. And there's a French philosopher, Pierre Sauvanet, he wrote on rhythm, and I quite like his views. And so he's quite critical of this very spatial view on rhythm. And he says, like in musical rhythm especially, it's much more periodicity that is important. And so in that sense, he says that for him, rhythm it's a kind of fluid, he says, fluid but constructed whole. It has to be apprehended in its totality. And so divisibility into parts must not take precedence, he says, over the movement as a whole. And so it's this combining of both structure and flow, which I find particularly interesting. So rhythm is, of course, it's like structured, but it has, it gives a sensation of fluidity. When you move from one time beat to another, it's not something which is like, it gives not a sensation of fragmentation. It gives rather a sensation of participation in a movement as a whole. And so I think in the water spirit songs and dances is this kind of sensation that that prevails, and the experience of participation it can give depends on this experience of rhythm. And the Punu word for rhythm, dibandu, it is derived from a verb ubande, which means to start or to beat. And so in that sense, it's a kind of, rhythm is conceptualized as a kind of primary beat. So in that sense, it's a beat that introduces a temporality of its own. And interestingly, the philosopher Sauvanet, when he speaks about rhythm, he says that like you can have rhythms which have not much structure, where it's like more or less an elaboration of the pulsation, of a kind of basic pulsation. And I think this is very much what you see in Punu twin dancing. It's not very much structured. It's a kind of very repetitive rhythm that is rather an elaboration of a kind of rhythmic pulse, where it's much more the periodicity and the fluidity of the movement that seems to prevail. So in that sense, I think that the kind of experience of participation has to do with this rhythm and what it allows for people when they engage in dancing and like embody the rhythm. Okay, I had a small part left, but I see that I have to, because else I will not be able to speak about the second dancing. So this is a bit the main idea that I wanted to say about the twin dancing, is that you really have to engage with rhythm and how you, see it. I think this conceptualization of rhythm as something that both deals with structure and flow and fluidity makes it possible to understand how, when participants engage in rhythm and in dancing, how they can have this experience of like getting into a deeper connection with the water spirit world on a kind of experiential level. And how then, because during the trances there is in the Punu view, there is an actual encounter with spirits. And so I think it's the rhythmic engagement that allows for this to happen. In the second dancing, which is the rejoicing dancing, so as you've seen, rhythm is more complex. It's a more structured rhythm. It has like, it's a dance event where you have always, the rhythm starts and then like the dancers will follow. So you have like 2 rows of dancing, one of men and one of women. And so the dancing is like a kind of invitation between the 2 rows. So generally there's a man or a woman can start and go to the other row, invite someone, and then that person goes as well to the other row and invite someone. And at a certain moment, the person who's invited can remain in the middle and do some more enhanced dancing. Like there is a kind of 2 phases. There's a moment that they do more like steps and jumping, and well, they also will throw their arms to the people who are in the rows to like engage them to respond to the dancing. And then there's a moment when there's a face-to-face hip rotation movement. So this is the kind of structure of the dancing, but it's quite improvised. You know, it's a basic structure, but according to the person, he or she can choose not to do the 2 phases and just go to the other row, or to it's a bit. And what also happens is sometimes the hip rotation phase can like follow one couple after the other when like the event is already a bit intensified. So there's a lot of there's a basic structure in the dancing, but it's really on the initiative of the participants, how it will evolve. Interestingly, the song repertoire here there's a bigger disconnection between the dancing and the songs, because the dancing is very much you have a strong energetic dimension. It's all about sharing same rhythms, and in the songs it can be very normative and very generally the songs will be about what kind of conduct people should have, especially the youth dance within these rejoicing dances will condemn all kinds of vices and attitudes like theft, adultery, greed, jealousy, especially for women, all kinds of sexual licentious conduct, neglect of one's tasks. So there's a kind of freedom more in the dancing. It's less, there's a lot about more sharing things, while in the songs, it's a lot about what proper conduct is expected. And so I think if I will try again to look at, if you go back to Turner and his structure, anti-structure view, you can see that on the one hand, there's a kind of structural elements that are regenerated, especially through the songs with their focus on normative conduct. On the other hand, in the dancing, it's very much more about, there's a kind of collective thing that happens. In fact, the sense of community that is created in the dancing, it's not just even the persons that are present. Often people, performers told me that when they spoke about the dancing, they always mentioned people before, that danced before, like ancestors that have deceased in the meantime. So the idea is very much, the dancing is to share, the idea of sharing is very important, and the creation of a kind of community beyond the actual community even, and with the people that have done this dancing even before they even, some people even they didn't know, or that have this reputation of having been good dancers. So the idea is of creating a community beyond the actual people that are there. And there's also a link with water spirit community. I will not go into detail because this is quite complex, but the verbs that are used for the 2 dance phases are the same that are used for fishing in water spirit pools. So there's also a link. So this is very much in the dancing a notion of community, of creating something which goes just beyond the individual, and that has like involves other dancers, but even ancestors and the whole, even the water spirit world. And the dance as well, I think you probably have seen that it's very much based on hip movements, and it has a strong linked to sexuality, and it's a kind of dance that celebrates sexuality and the fertility it brings. And so this as well is very much linked to the water spirit world, which is the world of fertility. So here as well in this dancing, you very much have a kind of sense of continuity and community that is created with something that is beyond the human. However, what you have more in this dance is the kind of strong structural element of social norms that is very much present in the songs. And so I think this dance is very interesting to see how, if you look at Turner's view, how from a kind of going beyond structure or strong fragmentation or division of things, you can also regenerate structural elements which are, which revitalize social structural elements. And so here again, I will try to show you how rhythm, looking at rhythm is interesting to see this dynamic of how from something which creates a kind of more flow or continuity, or something which is not limited to the, even not limited to the social world as such, but even goes beyond it and goes beyond the human, how out of that you can also create something which is, regenerate something which is social, which is, so the norms of society. And so I think it's because during the dance and there is something which goes beyond structure that the kind of this revitalization is possible, and rhythm very much allows that. I use the notion of rejoicing dances to speak about dances, because the Punu themselves, they say that the ultimate aim of these dances is to create joy. And when the dance is not successful, they told me, there's no joy in this dancing, this is not good. So it's all about creating a kind of emotional sense of being involved, and of being involved as a group or as a community. And this happens through the building up of shared rhythms. So I'm very much like, especially in this dancing, it's like happens progressively. First, the drummers will start to mark the rhythm, and then the dancers will follow, and it's because of their enthusiasm and what they bring in the rhythm that other peoples will join. And so it's this kind of build up of shared rhythms that allows also this emotional engagement to happen. And so here I very much follow, I assume that you know Durkheim's notion of collective effervescence, where he very much also speaks about ritual and how something happens in ritual that brings people in a kind of collective state of mind, which is beyond the ordinary state of mind. And there's a reading of Durkheim by Randall Collins, which very much focuses on how interaction processes make this kind of state of mind possible, where you are in a kind of sharing with others and in a kind of also emotional sharing. And so he says that there are two mechanisms that make this kind of sharing possible. He says it's, you need to have a mutual focus and emotional entrainment. And I think, and this emotional entrainment happens, he says, through falling into shared rhythms. And so this is very much what I see happening in these Punu dances of rejoicing, is that, there's a kind of going into shared rhythms through the dancing. And this then evokes a kind of what Collins also, in reference to Durkheim, calls emotional energy, kind of something on an emotional level that happens, and that the Punu very much describe as joy, as a joyful feeling. And he also says that pride happens when someone is engaged in such a kind of ritual that brings people in this altered, I don't know if you should say it, an altered state of mind, but a kind of an intensified state of mind. There's also, he says, there's a lot of pride is the emotion that is attached to a self. He says that it is energized by the group. Well, interestingly, in the case of this Punu rejoicing dances, they also always said to me, it's a dance of the proud people. You know, if you want to do this dance, you just have to go for it. You can't feel any shame. You just have to go for it. And so it's this dynamic I feel very much is this dance as described by Collins in reference to Durkheim, of like being in a kind of a different state of mind and in usual life, and where you are like an intensified state that creates this collective joy, and that also makes the individual a level, gives a kind of self-confidence to people. And so interestingly, if you look at rhythm, I think going into shared rhythms creates this kind of, collectively going into something. And this is what allows also then to integrate the kind of messages which are given in the songs, which are more social structural. But I think it's because people during the dancing, that you have this very strong group dynamic, that the kind of normative messages that come in the songs also get like integrated in a certain sense. And interestingly, rhythm can not only regenerate things, but it also leads to improvisation, especially in this dancing. There's a lot of improvisation happening on the level of the dancing, but also on the level of songs. Sometimes new songs can be brought simply out of being engaged in dancing, or in song someone can give a new inspiration. And so the youth dance time with Telugu was created in a sense out of the person who created it in an interview told me that he did this out of being really following the other dancers and being so enthusiastic about what they did that he just like launched his own view and brought his own song. And his song was about something recent, about love affair and freely initiated by youngsters. It was in the 90s he created it. So it was something new that he brought out of following something ancient, in fact, out of following what existed. And so this dynamic is very much developed by Tarde, who was in fact Durkheim's opponent, because Durkheim very much focused on how you recreate social structure through this kind of processes of ritual and the kind of effervescence that it brings, while Tarde was someone who very much focused on innovation. He said that when people imitate others, it also leads to innovation. It's not just recreating the same. And so he says that the social is an intersubjective creative flow, and it leads to innovation. And so Deleuze has very much used Tarde's view. I don't know if you... Deleuze has very much this idea of repetition that creates differentiation. And this is based on Tarde and his view of imitation that leads to innovation. And this is also something that you can see in the dancing. It's not just about creating shared rhythms, and it's also about following the other and then creating something new out of yourself. So it's imitating an imitation that leads to something new. And so it's both of these dynamics at the same time. It's not just like, following the other and creating something collective. It's also about, especially in this dance, more than in the first one, it's also about innovation and about bringing something new. And I think looking at rhythm allows to bring these two together instead of seeing this also always as something opposed, like, or rhythm is something that regenerates social structure or it brings innovation. I think it's because it allows both that it regenerates something that exists, but in the same time, new elements come in. And I think dancing allows this because of this capacity of rhythm, of both creating something shared and allowing for something new to happen. And interestingly, Tarde, who very much focused on innovation, at a certain moment, he also speaks about joy. And he says, joy is a natural flower of sociability. And he speaks also about festive moments as being very important in creating that and creating this kind of sociability. So there is a possibility of linking these two authors beyond seeing this opposition between, just regeneration or simply like innovation. I think, looking at rhythm, it's very much the idea of looking at rhythm as something, it's flow. You can bring it back to the notion of flow and structure at the same time. It's out of a flow, structure arises, and out of repetition of structure, new flows arises. And in that kind of dynamic, you have like repetitions and new things that come up. This is a bit like the thing I think I will conclude, because else there will not be any time left for discussions. Okay, so I'm looking forward to have your questions and your remarks on these ideas.
Well, thank you so much, Carine.
Yeah.
It's an amazing topic. I'm always delighted with your work, really. I mean it. And because of exactly what you are saying, I think that for a long time, we used to struggle with these dichotomies between synchronicity, diachrony, between flow and structure. And I think that the way you locate rhythm in the whole anthropological debate, beyond ritual, beyond time, beyond those topics, I think this is amazing. It really opened my mind, and so really appreciate that you're here. I just one very small question regarding disruptive rhythms. Did you were able to see some disruptions on when these collective things are going on and happening and establishing continuity? Did you see any kind of disruptions of those collective flows?
I think what I describe is a bit the ideal view. It's the ideal view of what should happen in dancing, but it does it does not automatically happen. And there's a lot of times when I said, people sometimes say this is no good dancing, there's no joy in dancing. It's when when it doesn't work very well and when there is disruption. And it happens to things like people drinking too much and then like disturbing the dancing and staying in the middle, in the center of like in the rejoicing dancing, staying in the middle too long and disturbing the whole flow of the movement. Yeah, it happens a lot. So it's more like a kind of, maybe I should have made it more clear. It's a kind of ideal of what should happen, and it's not necessarily the case. And it takes, it takes engagement and commitment of the participants to allow this to happen, because it's not there. You really have to like build up this coming into these shared rhythms, and there can be a lot of things that make it not work, and then just like it's simply seen as a kind of event that was not very well. Even with the water spirit dancing, it happens that there are no possession trances, and then people say, well, this is a kind of failed event, you know, we didn't succeed in bringing this about. So that's why it's interesting also to look at, in my thesis I did look at specific events, and if you look at specific events, then you can really see how it's the initiative of some participants that allows things to happen, and sometimes it doesn't work out. But I would say it's not structurally, there's no structural search for this continuity. In fact, the ideal is that it works. That is like, but yeah.
Thank you very much. So Beatriz Herrera has a question, so please, Beatriz, feel free to ask your question to Carine.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I was really engaged with it, and it resonated with some research that I am starting to do about Mayan dances in Central America. So when I started to go through the deeper layers of the dances and the meaning of them, they mostly like are aligned within a sacred domain. So every festivity in which there is dance, it has this sacred arc, and the communities are very clear when they say that dance was like a part of the cosmology, a part of the creation of the universe. There's a moment in which one of the ancient grandfathers created the dance for people, and so all the dance events have this sense of being a tribute to the ancestors, many of them. So I was thinking about when you were talking about joy and about a feeling of joy in a way. So joy in these communities would be understood as also a tribute for the ancestors. So joy is not for the people themselves who are embodying the dance, but for the people they are like, they are giving the gift, giving the tribute to the dance. The dance is a tribute that it's felt among the people that are dancing, and for the others who are in the spirit world or the ancestors world. And I wanted to ask you, how do you relate to this sense of engaging with, like, because you've mentioned it, but I was very curious if you sense this kind of of giving to the spirits or to the sacred world.
Okay. I didn't hear when Punu speak about dancing, they don't use the notion, I didn't hear them say that they have to bring joy to the ancestors or to the spirits. It's not, the notion of joy is not used, or I didn't hear it directly with regard to the ancestors or spirits, but it's they do, like in the water spirit dancing, it's clear that the dancing is, it's the best way to make them, make spirits continue to, I don't, it's the best way to make sure that they continue, have a good relationship with the humans, that they will bring the good luck and they will ensure prosperity. In that sense, it's very, this is very clearly stated, that you need to dance and chant because they like that, and then they will give you. This is very much the way they say it always. They like it, and then they will bring us good luck, and then there will be prosperity. But I didn't hear them say that we have to bring joy to the spirits. It's maybe it's rather than they like it, so we do it for them. The idea of doing it for them is very clear, but it's not in the terms of, I didn't see anyone speaking about then the spirits rejoice or something like, but it's maybe just a small difference. And with regard to the rejoicing dancing, it's the link with the ancestors, it's less direct in the sense that they don't say that they dance for the ancestors in the rejoicing. It's rather for the humans, for those who are present, but through their dancing, there's a connection with the ancestors who also did it. But the kind of more direct link is in the spirit dancing. There they really dance for the spirits. While in the water spirit dancing, in the rejoicing dance, it's rather it's more the community thing that is important, but this community is always already linked with ancestors, because the idea is we don't exist if they would not have existed. So, but it's not for them, yeah. So this is kind of the two things I see. But the link with a world beyond the human is always present, that's clear. It's very much present, yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much, Carine. I think that Juan might have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for an exciting presentation. You said something that called my attention. I am interested in rhythm as this sort of unifying force. Yeah. And you were saying that people that participate in the ritual suddenly get the feeling that they are all integrated, but it is not just that they are unified, but they get the feeling that the whole is greater than the parts.
Yeah.
And this is a very interesting thing. And my question is, can we understand this as something else than a mere illusion, right? Does this, for example, if we were to be rigorous, can we say, does this have any way of being understood from the scientific sense? Usually we think that human subjectivity is something linked to yourself only, right? And this agrees with Descartes, of course. But if I attempt to answer at my own question to see what is your view, if you agree or not, it would be that perhaps in this doing together, one gets this degree of connection with the other participants, that it is one acts as if it was one collective subjectivity that is in place there. But what is it there? What is this greater unity that is greater than the parts? What would be your view on that?
I have not engaged that far in my thinking, because I think you come to a level which is, well, it's beyond the ethnographic, and it's beyond, I think, as an anthropologist, it's a bit difficult to come to this level of, how does this happen? And I can say how Punu describe it, and how they, what I see them do, and how I observed it, and when I did the dancing, how I experienced it. But to say in a more like general way what happens and how can we understand what happens, I don't know. I don't have a view on that. I don't have particularly. I have not tried to go beyond that as an anthropologist. Yeah. So I think there are people. There's a lot written on. I don't even know what it is. Neuronal mirroring and these kinds of things. I mean, and you will find a lot. But I've never engaged into this because in fact, I was once invited in Paris at a seminar which engaged in these debates. It was a kind of transdisciplinary thing between anthropologists and people who worked on neurologists on brain issues. And it was about this kind of thing. But we came to the conclusion that it's quite hard to bridge these two disciplines, because we were like the anthropologists, okay, we just say what people and in their culture, how they see it. And they came with all these kind of complex brain theories and like which part of the brain was activated. And it was also on the issue of pleasure, which part of the brain got activated in pleasure. And yeah, it was like interesting, but I find it very hard to connect these disciplines. So if you would like to do it, it would be very innovative, I think. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for an informative reply.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you so much, Carine and Juan, for your question. We have another question from Elon Morris.
Yes, thank you very much, Carine. I'm particularly interested in the different words that are used to talk about rhythm. And so I was really excited when you talked about some of the other words that we use. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about this, because I'm aware that we have a very particular, or there's lots of European ideas that come from the word rhythm, and sometimes perhaps we're applying this word to other cultures. So I'm curious to know, what is it that's talked about within this culture itself when they talk about the dance? Are they using a word to talk about rhythm, or is it something else?
Yes, they use, I said the notion dibando, which is, in fact, comes from a verb ubando, which is, it means to mark a step. So it's very much linked to the step, like the rhythm is when you like mark a step, those step after, the idea is that one step after the other, this creates the rhythm. So this is where I and the idea also that like it's one step after the other, and this periodicity creates rhythm. So this is the way, I mean, they didn't explain this like this explicitly to me, but the notion of stepping is very important in how they see rhythm. It's like when you step and then you like, you mark a step and you mark it on the floor. This is the way rhythm is seen. So it's very much seen as one thing after the other. That's why I also think that focusing on periodicity in regard to these dancing is quite justified. It's not like it's looking at how a movement is created out of this kind of steps, and how you create this is the way that there's not much, I don't know if I can say more about how they look at rhythm. Is I think the main thing that is specifically, that's why I also it's always a bit difficult when you do ethnographic research, like how much you rely on emic notions, how much you try to use like external theories. I found the theory of Sovanet interesting. Of course, it's a Western theory, but since I always try to find elements that join them, since I had this notion of the bandu and like the step and a kind of periodicity that is created, I found his view on rhythm, Sovanet's view, quite close to that, and then I use it because I think you don't always find very elaborate things, especially when you work on dance. People do not always have such an elaborate discourse on dancing, and so you can have some elements, and then I would not say like you can't use any Western theories. I think you just have to be very much start from like local emic elements and then try to connect things. But only using emic elements can also be problematic, because especially with dancing, people don't have always elaborate discourses. And then so I tried to use both.
No, that sounds very interesting. And hearing you speak about that, I instantly think a lot about the use of the word rhythmos in ancient Greece, connected also again to steps in dancing, and these commonalities in how we experience a kind of pulse in the body as something. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Eilon, for your question, and perhaps adding a bit more of what Eilon was saying. What I found super interesting in the work of Carine is that, interestingly, she presents us with this idea, with these two meanings of ancient Greek rhythm. So we have flow on the one side and a structure and order on the other side, but here are completely merged, which I found is like a really, really provocative. And I also wanted to from what you were discussing with Eilon, what do you think about rhythms in terms of the ethnographic encounter?
You mean the rhythm of the encounter between the anthropologist and the local? And
I'm thinking in the work of Gregor Dobler, and also in the work, but more specifically on the work of Joe Berguns, who speak here on Monday. And he has this idea that very similar with what is happening among Punu. So you create rhythms in one way or another, allowed to create this kind of collectiveness, group of things.
Yeah.
And he mentions that when he uses that for conducting ethnography, he connects with the observant. So the distinction, according to him, between the observer and the one being observed blurs and or blend. I don't know what's the verb for saying that, merge together. So yes, I was thinking on that, on what do you think about maybe that idea, or how you, when you participated on this Punu dance, twin dance, did you feel at some point to be part of the same, or maybe shortening the distance?
Absolutely. I think for me, the dance was my entry into the community, and because I already had I've done a lot of dancing before, so I was quite in, And when I came, I said that I was interested in dancing. So, and this was the way Punu people spoke about me, that I was the one who came to do their dances. And well, I also learned the language. That was like the things I said. She dances and she speaks like our language. So, but dancing was seen as, I think it's it is, when you participate in dancing, it's a way of being present with the people. And I think for me, it really allowed me to easily connect with people. So I think, that dancing can be used as a kind of metaphor of how, as an anthropologist, you can really get into a life world of other people. I think you can. It's when you participate in like the rhythms of their life. You can see it in a global. I would say, I haven't done this myself, but I think like you can use participation in dance or participation in the same rhythm as a kind of way of looking at how does an anthropologist does his job as anthropologist, and how does he or she connect with people. It's through entering the rhythm of people's lives. And dancing is a good way of doing that in a very literal way. But I also, for me, going, because I went with the women to the fields, I went to fishing with them, and all of this was like it's participating in the rhythms of people's lives. I think you need to participate, or else you won't. It's like the basic thing of getting into a kind of feeling of connection that then gives informations. I think it's the basis of connection. So I quite agree with this idea.
Thank you, Carine. Does anyone have another question? You can raise your hands on the chat box, or I guess or maybe in the participant box, or you can also write it through the chat. If there are no more questions, then we will pass to our second speaker. So, yes. Thank you so much, Carine.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, for participating, and hope that we continue doing this type of events with more regularity.
Okay, thank you very much.